Hello, and thank you for joining me for the second episode. Again, we're taking small baby steps, and for some people this might seem all very simple, especially if you've programmed before, and it is, but I think it's also worth listening and kind of following along, because I'm trying to fill in some of the gaps, some of the things that may seem obvious, and trying to kind of show you why they are the way they are. And that'll help us as we learn and develop, especially when we start doing kind of bigger programs and other programming languages. So stick with me, we're going to be getting a bit more complicated soon, but again, this episode, baby steps. And we're going to be looking at two things. We're going to be looking at the development environment, so that's the program where we will be creating the software, and also just what is a program, what is code, and then just starting with our very first simple program. So for us, the development environment is going to be a computer called TIC80. And we can see if you go to tic.computer, that'll do, and then you can go to the create button here. And this is where you can download the software. Okay, so this is our development environment, this is our computer. And if I jump back to my notes here, the way to think of this is, if you imagine this is our TV here. This is a TV, and with a TV, all we ever see is the front of it, right? So we see the screen there, and we might see some buttons on the front. TVs typically don't have buttons on the front anymore, what they used to. And they have perhaps an on button and then a volume buttons for up and down. And what we're doing is that is the what we call the interface that it's showing us as members of the public. But behind the scenes, there's a lot going on, right? If you opened up a TV and looked inside, you see all sorts of stuff. And it's that's making it work. It's that's showing the programs, it's recording the programs, it's the kind of innards inside that's doing all of the clever stuff. And what we get at the front here is just an interface that lets us members of the public control it and not have to worry about what's going on inside. And software is like that, right? Software that we use, like this tool I'm using here, all we see is the user interface. We just see the front of it with the buttons that have been presented to us to allow us to control it. Except as software developers, we do have to worry about this stuff that's going on behind, as that is where the programs run and often where the programs are written, at least in the software we're going to use. So if I flick back to my computer here, we can think of this screen here, which is the one that appears as being the user interface. This is where we can do things like type run, then it runs our programs. I press escape, it jumps back there. So escape key always kind of takes us back to this screen. However, if we press the escape key again here, it takes us into a number of different screens, and this is the inside. This is where the software is written. By clicking on these keys along the top here, we can see different parts of it. I'll just skim through it here to show you. This is where we create the graphics there. Here's where we can create the map. There's nothing there at the moment, but the game map. Sound effects editor, music editor. We'll look at all these things in a bit of detail later. But the important thing for us here when we're starting to develop software in here, starting to develop our game, is to understand that these different places are where we create the game. And this, if we press escape and go back to the front here, this is the kind of the front of the machine, the bit that we see when we open it up. And there's no buttons here, it's all kind of done using commands, and we'll come to that later. If we type in help here, we'll see a list of some of the commands. There's more than this actually, but some of the commands we can run. So typing edit here takes us to that screen, same as the pressing escape. So that's our computer, and that's where we're going to both write the software and also play the software. So there we go. So what is a program? So yeah, just quickly talk about this. What is a program? So a program is made up of broadly two different things in life. One is the code, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time. And the other one is what I've called assets here. So in games we tend to call them assets, but assets are the other things that aren't the code. They are things like images, the sound. In other pieces of software, like word processors or whatever, perhaps we use other sorts of assets. We might use files. We can open files. We might connect to devices like printers or whatever it is. There's these other things that are part of the software environment but aren't the thing that we write. So for most of this course, we're going to be focusing on the code. So let's have a quick flick. I'm going to quickly show you the code here. This is when you open TIC80, which is our computer, it already has a program loaded. And if we look in here, we can see it. I'm going to ignore most of this for today. We can also see it's got this kind of oops, there we go. It's already got these bits of art drawn for us, and again, we're not going to worry about that today. Most of this we're going to ignore for now, but I want to just concentrate on these 4 lines at the bottom here, at least these top 3: the CLS, the SPR, and the print. And in software, so we're doing something called kind of procedural programming here. I'm not going to talk about what that means, but procedural programming is like most of the programming that you will do. And each of those lines is called a statement. And a statement, think of it today as just it's an action. It's something that does something to the screen. It draws something, it moves something, it changes the color of something, perhaps it triggers a sound, something like that. It's a statement that happens, it's an action. That's not the only type of statements. As our games get more complicated, we have other sorts of statements that kind of make something different happen depending on different circumstances. We'll come to that. But the key thing that I want us to keep in mind is that code is made up of a set of statements, a sequence of statements, and we start at the top and we go down to the bottom. That's the key message for today. Is a set of actions, a set of statements that start at the top, and the computer goes, I'm going to do this one, 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 all the way from the top to the bottom. And this is what I want to show you here with these 3 lines here. I'm just going to move that one down so you can use your keyboard, and I want you to do this in your challenge. Use your keyboard to add new lines, delete new lines, kind of move around, do some copy and pasting. I want to put some lines in here. Okay. So we've got these 3 lines, and it starts at the top and it works down. So it does this one first, this CLS13. We'll talk about what each of these functions does at another time in detail, but I can tell you that CLS, what that does is it clears the screen. And it clears the screen and fills it with a color 13. We'll come back to that in a second. This SPR, what that does is it draws something on the screen. It draws a picture on the screen, and we'll see that. And the final one here is print, and you can guess what that does is it prints some text. It takes this text, whatever's here, hello world, and it prints it to the screen. You'll see there's lots of different numbers here, and they control how it does it. So for example, prints hello world. These numbers here control where it prints that on the screen. And again, this is something we'll come back to, is what do these different numbers mean? How do we manipulate them? What do we do? The key thing I want to focus on here is that we've got 3 things happening here, 1, 2, and 3, and they happen in a certain order. The computer starts at the top and works down. It does clearing the screen first. It does printing an image, and then it does the printing the text. And if I run, if you click this arrow here, it runs the program. We can see this is the clearing the screen, coloring it in the blue color, and then it is drawing this image. The SPR draws this image here, and finally it does hello world. Now it does some other stuff as well, which I'm not going to talk to today. But what I want you to notice is if I move the image behind the words appear on top. Now why is that? Now the reason for that is it's all to do with the order in which things are happening. You can think of this as kind of layering on top of each other. It clears the screen, so then it is just blue. Then it draws that image on top, and so then the image sits on top of the blue, and then it draws the writing on top, so the writing sits on top. If I go back to this screen and putting minus does something to the line. It stops the line from actually happening. We'll talk about that again later. Lots to talk about later. But it's going to ignore this line now. So it's going to only do 2 things. It's going to clear the screen with a color, and then it's going to print. Again, we run that. You can see that the character is no longer there. It's because it's clearing the screen, it's not drawing the character, and then it's putting the text on top. Right. And so that's really just the message for today, really, is that's what a program is doing. It's starting at the top, working down, executing each of these lines, and each of these lines does something. Now, in your challenge, which you're going to do after this, I'm going to set you some tasks. I want you to change some of these, change the order in which these things happen, and see what happens when just to try and prove to us that the order of these commands does matter. One thing I'll quickly show you, because one of the things I'll get you to look at is this value 13 here. This value 13. It's a color, right? That's the trick. It's the color. And counting usually starts at 0 in computer programs. So if we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And if we run the program, we can see it's this kind of sky blue color. Go back to 1, run it, we can see it's a sky blue color. So one of your challenges will be to just change that value, change it to purple. I want to see a purple background, but I want to see some other things you do to play with the order of these actions, these statements, to see how that changes how it works. And we'll talk a lot more in the future about why this is obviously happening more than once, but let's not worry about that. Okay, there you go. So I've got some questions for you about this, and I've got a challenge for you, but I really want to get you into this editor, make sure you can edit the code, change the order, see the effect of it running. Right, good luck, and I look forward to hearing how that goes.